She thought it was just a family dinner. Her husband, her father-in-law, his mistress, all under one roof. But when that mistress called her worthless in front of everyone, no one expected what happened next, because the man who had stayed silent for years finally stood up. And his reaction didn't just expose a betrayal, it changed three lives forever. Stay till the end to see how a single word spoken in cruelty became the spark that turned humiliation into redemption. If this story moves you, hit like, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more true-to-life dramas about love, betrayal, and unexpected strength. Jessica Carter Hayes stood in the fluorescent glare of Northwestern Memorial Hospital's third-floor hallway, staring at her trembling hands. Blood stained her palms, not her own. The antiseptic smell mixed with something metallic made her stomach turn. A woman in a charcoal suit approached, her heels clicking against the linoleum. She carried a leather briefcase and wore the expression of someone who delivered bad news professionally. "Mrs. Hayes," the woman said, extending a manila folder. "I'm Rebecca Collins, representing the Hayes family interests. We need you to sign these documents immediately." Jessica's voice came out hoarse. "What documents?" "A non-disclosure agreement. Sign it right now or you lose everything, including your freedom." "I don't understand. Brenda just died. She was trying to help me and now—" "Which is precisely why we need your signature." Rebecca's tone sharpened. "You were present when an employee of Hayes Industries was fatally shot during what appears to be an embezzlement investigation. The police have questions. The media will have more. This NDA protects you from prosecution if you cooperate fully with the family's version of events." Jessica looked through the glass window into the ICU. Machines beeped steadily. Beyond the bed, she could see Lake Michigan through the window, dark waters stretching endlessly. "What's the family's version?" Jessica asked quietly. Rebecca opened the folder. "That you discovered irregularities in company accounts, that you confronted the wrong people, that Brenda Walsh was an accomplice who tried to silence you before taking her own life when cornered." "That's not true." "Truth is flexible in court, Mrs. Hayes. Evidence is what matters. And right now, all the evidence points to you as either a co-conspirator or the next victim. Sign this and you become a witness. Refuse and you become a defendant." Jessica's hands shook harder. 6 months ago, she'd been planning a quiet anniversary dinner. Now she stood in a hospital hallway being asked to rewrite reality. "I need to think." "You have 60 seconds, Rebecca said, checking her watch. "After that, I walk away and you deal with the FBI alone. Clock's ticking, Mrs. Hayes." Jessica closed her eyes. How had her life become something that required legal protection just to survive? The answer she knew had started at a family dinner. Title card, 6 months earlier. Jessica stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of their penthouse, watching Chicago wake up beneath her. She designed this space 7 years ago, back when she was still Jessica Carter, architect, before she became Jessica Carter Hayes' wife. The pennant house was beautiful, $4 million beautiful, every detail perfect, the cantilevered kitchen island she'd sketched on their honeymoon, the reading nook with custom shelving, the master bathroom with heated marble floors. She'd designed it, but Michael owned it. Her name wasn't on the deed. Her phone buzzed, and her therapist, Dr. Sarah Pacheco, confirming their 11 o'clock appointment. Jessica arrived at the Michigan Avenue office building 40 minutes early and sat in her car, preparing. Therapy had been Michael's idea 6 months ago, after she'd broken down at his company's Christmas party. "You seem disconnected," he'd said the next morning. "Maybe someone professional could help." She'd agreed because she had felt disconnected. From Michael, from herself, from the woman who'd once stayed up all night drafting blueprints and debating load-bearing walls. Dr. Pacheco's office was warm, carefully neutral. The therapist sat across from Jessica, notepad in lap, expression patient. "You say you're fine," Dr. Pacheco said gently, "but who are you trying to convince?" Jessica exhaled. "I don't know anymore." "Have you thought more about what we discussed last week? About rekindling your career?" "Michael says the firm needs me focused on supporting him right now. Hayes Industries is expanding into Singapore. It's a critical time." "And what do you need?" The question hung there. Jessica left the session and stopped at Whole Foods. While reaching for organic coffee, Michael's specific brand, the one he ordered every morning, she saw it. A woman, standing near the bakery section, brunette, late 20s, elegant in a way that looked effortless. She was laughing at something on her phone. Jessica wouldn't have noticed her except for one detail. The woman wore a silk scarf that Jessica recognized. It had been Michael's mother's favorite, a Hermes pattern in blue and gold. Michael kept it in a locked drawer in his study, said it was too precious to wear. The woman tucked the scarf into her designer bag and walked away. Jessica's hands tightened on her shopping cart. That evening, she did something she'd never done before. She went through Michael's gym bag while he was in the shower. Tucked in the side pocket, beneath his protein powder and wireless headphones, she found a second phone. It was locked, but notifications showed on the screen. Brenda, see you at the estate tomorrow night. Wear something that makes a statement. Brenda, can't wait to see the look on her face. Jessica's breath caught. She took photos of the phone with her own, then carefully replaced it exactly where she'd found it. The next morning, she hired a private investigator, a woman named Gloria Martinez, who specialized in matrimonial cases. 3 days later, Gloria handed her a folder in a coffee shop in Evanston. Your husband is having an affair, Gloria said without preamble. Brenda Walsh, 28, financial consultant. They meet twice a week at the Peninsula Hotel, but there's something else. She slid another photo across the table. It showed Stephen Hayes, Michael's father, CEO of Hayes Industries, entering the same Peninsula Hotel on different dates, meeting someone Jessica couldn't see clearly in the photos. Your father-in-law, Gloria continued. Different days, different times, but same hotel, same discretion. Jessica felt cold. You think Stephen knows about Michael and Brenda? I think Stephen might be the one covering for him, or Gloria hesitated. There's another possibility. Some of these financial transactions you asked me to trace, they're routed through accounts with your digital signature, but the IP addresses don't match your devices. What does that mean? It means someone's using your identity, and the only people with access to your personal information are family. Jessica drove home in silence. That night, Michael kissed her forehead and said he loved her. She said nothing. 2 days later, she took a pregnancy test. Positive. She sat on the bathroom floor, the test in her shaking hands, and tried to remember the last time Michael had touched her with anything resembling desire. 3 months? 4? She texted her best friend Lauren, I'm pregnant. Don't know if it changes anything. Lauren responded immediately. Tell him tonight. Babies have a way of making people remember what matters. Jessica looked at her calendar. Tonight was Stephen Hayes' 67th birthday dinner at the family estate in Lake Forest. She would tell Michael after the dinner, privately. Maybe Lauren was right. Maybe a baby would change everything. She had no idea how right that would be. The Hayes estate sat on 3 acres of perfectly manicured lakefront property, the kind of old money that didn't need to announce itself. Jessica had always felt small here, like an actor on someone else's stage. She wore a simple black dress, elegant, appropriate, forgettable. Michael had barely looked at her during the 40-minute drive from Chicago. Remember, he'd said as they pulled up the circular driveway, Dad's been stressed about the Singapore expansion. Don't bring up anything that might upset him, as if Jessica ever brought up anything at these dinners. The main house glowed warm against the October evening. Stephen's large sister Margaret met them at the door. Margaret Hayes, 54, chief financial officer of Hayes Industries, a woman who smiled with her mouth but never her eyes. Jessica, darling, Margaret said, air-kissing both cheeks, don't you look lovely? Is that the dress from last year's benefit? It's comfortable, Jessica replied evenly. The dining room was set for 7. Stephen at the head, Michael to his right, Jessica beside Michael, Margaret across from them, and 2 board members whose names Jessica could never remember. Place settings gleamed. Limoges china, Baccarat crystal, Georgian silver. Stephen entered, tall and commanding even at 67. He'd built Hayes Industries from a small medical supply company into a healthcare conglomerate worth $800 million. People didn't argue with Stephen Hayes. Family, he said warmly, embracing Michael, nodding to Jessica, kissing Margaret's cheek. Thank you all for being here. They settled into their seats. Servers appeared with the first course. Then the doorbell rang. Stephen glanced at his watch. Ah, right on time. Jessica looked up as a woman entered the dining room. Brunette, late 20s, wearing a blue and gold Hermes scarf. Brenda. Everyone, Stephen announced, this is Brenda Walsh, our consultant for the Singapore expansion. I've invited her to join us tonight to discuss some final details. Brenda smiled graciously as an extra chair was brought in, placed directly across from Jessica. Their eyes met. Brenda's expression was pleasant, professional, and utterly cold. Dinner began. Conversation flowed around Jessica while she sat frozen. Margaret discussed quarterly projections. The board members debated market positioning. Michael refilled wine glasses, and Brenda spoke like someone who belonged. Stephen, Brenda said during the main course, I noticed you switched to the Colombian blend for your morning coffee. Much better choice. The Ethiopian was too acidic. Jessica's fork stopped midway to her mouth. That was Michael's coffee preference. Specific, particular, something only someone intimate would know. And I spoke with the jeweler, Brenda continued, touching her necklace. They're creating a replica of your mother's favorite pendant, the one with the sapphires. It should be ready next month. Michael's mother had died 3 years ago. Jessica had never seen any sapphire pendant, had never been told about one, but Brenda knew. Also, Brenda added, smiling at Michael, I took Thor to the groomer yesterday. He finally stopped trying to bite them. Thor, the family's German shepherd who lived at the estate. Michael visited him every weekend, said it reminded him of childhood. Jessica's hands began to tremble. Excuse me, Jessica said, her voice barely audible. Who exactly are you? The table went quiet. Brenda tilted her head, expression innocent. I'm sorry? You're not a consultant. Jessica's voice grew stronger. Consultants don't know coffee preferences and dog grooming schedules. So I'll ask again, who the hell are you? Michael's hand landed on her arm. Jessica, not now. She shook him off. How long has this been going on? Brenda leaned back in her chair, the innocent expression melting into something sharper. Does it matter? 2 years? 3? You stopped being relevant to Michael a long time ago, sweetheart. The words hit like a slap. You're just... Brenda's smile turned pitying. For appearances, something pretty to bring to charity galas. But worthless, really, in every way that counts. The room seemed to tilt. Jessica looked at Michael, waiting for him to defend her, to deny it, to do something. He looked down at his plate. Michael, Jessica whispered, tell me she's lying. He said nothing. Jessica pushed back from the table, her chair scraping loudly. Tears blurred her vision. She needed to leave, to get out, to breathe. Stephen's hand slammed down on the table with a crack that made everyone jump. Michael, by you! Stephen's voice was ice. Get out of my house! Michael's head snapped up. Dad? Now, and take her with you, and Stephen's gaze shifted to Brenda. You, tell Margaret the Singapore deal is dead. I don't do business with people who insult my family. Brenda's confidence faltered. Mr. Hayes, I don't understand. You understand perfectly. Stephen stood, his 6'2" frame suddenly intimidating. You thought you could come into my home, humiliate my daughter-in-law at my birthday dinner, and face no consequences? You're fired. Both of you leave. Margaret started to speak. Stephen, perhaps we should discuss this privately. Not now, Margaret. The silence was absolute. Michael stood slowly, his face white. Dad, you don't understand the situation. I understand exactly. Stephen's jaw was tight. I understand my son is a coward who lets his mistress call his wife worthless in front of his family. I understand I raised you better than this, and I failed. Get out. Brenda grabbed her purse, her composure cracking. Michael followed her, not meeting anyone's eyes. The front door closed. 2 engines started. Gravel crunched under tires. Jessica stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Stephen turned to the board members. Gentlemen, I apologize. We'll reschedule. Margaret, clear the room. Within minutes, the dining room was empty except for Stephen and Jessica. He pulled out the chair beside him. Sit, please. Jessica sat, feeling like she was in a dream. Stephen poured 2 glasses of bourbon from the bar cart, set one in front of her. I'm sorry you had to find out like that, he said quietly. I've suspected for months. I was gathering proof. He pulled a folder from the sideboard drawer, slid it across to her. Inside, Photographs of Michael and Brenda at hotels, restaurants, entering an apartment building in River North. Bank statements showing transfers to accounts Jessica didn't recognize. Hotel receipts spanning 2 years. I needed to be sure before I confronted him, Stephen continued. But there's more. Michael's been stealing from the company, small amounts at first, then larger. Routing funds through shell accounts to finance his lifestyle with her. Jessica stared at the documents, her hands shaking. The accounts are in your name, Stephen said. Digital signatures match yours perfectly. Did you sign anything Michael asked you to without reading it? She thought back. Tax documents, property transfers. Trust me, just sign here, Michael would say, and she would, because he was her husband. Yes, she whispered. I trusted him. Stephen's expression softened. Then we have a problem. If this goes public, you will be implicated. Federal embezzlement charges carry serious time. Oh, but I didn't know. I believe you, but belief isn't evidence. Stephen leaned forward. Jessica, I need your help. I can't move against my own son and sister without concrete proof. But you can. Sister? Margaret's involved? Look at the routing codes. Every transfer was approved by Margaret's division. Some directly by her. This isn't Michael being clever. This is Margaret using Michael and using you as the fall guy. Jessica's mind reeled. Why are you telling me this? Why help me? Stephen was quiet for a moment, looking at the portrait of his late wife on the wall. Because you remind me of her, he said finally. My Eleanor. Everyone thought she was just a housewife, decorative, there to smile at parties. But she was the smartest person I knew. When she died, I realized I'd never told her that enough. He turned back to Jessica, and his eyes were fierce. I'm not going to watch another woman in this family be called worthless when she's anything but. So here's what we're going to do. Stephen opened his laptop, turned the screen toward Jessica. Spreadsheets filled with numbers, transactions, dates. Michael and Margaret have been embezzling for 5 years, Stephen explained. They thought I was too focused on expansion to notice. But I notice everything. The Singapore project? It's a front, a way to move money offshore before I catch on. Jessica studied the screen, her architectural mind finding patterns in the chaos. These dates, they matched trips Michael told me were for work conferences. 3 of those conferences didn't exist. I checked. Stephen pulled up another file. And these property purchases in the Cayman Islands, all under shell companies, but the beneficial owners trace back to accounts with your signatures. Can't we prove the signatures are forged? We can try, but digital signatures are legally binding. And if Margaret and Michael claim you were a knowing participant, it becomes he said, she said. Unless we have proof they acted without your knowledge. Jessica felt the weight of it settling on her shoulders. What kind of proof? A confession or transactions they made while you were provably elsewhere, or communication between them that excludes you? Stephen closed the laptop. We have 72 hours before they transfer everything offshore. Once that money leaves the country, it's gone, and you're left holding evidence of the crime. Why 72 hours? Because I just fired them from the Singapore project. They'll panic and accelerate their timeline. Stephen handed her a burner phone. This is clean. Use it to contact me only. Your regular phone might be monitored. Jessica took the phone, feeling its weight. What do you need me to do? Get into Michael's home office. He keeps backup records. Old habits from when he didn't trust cloud storage. We need files that show he initiated these transactions. Emails, documents, anything that proves you weren't involved. He'll be suspicious if I suddenly start going through his things. Tell him you want to talk about the pregnancy. Jessica's eyes widened. How did you touched your stomach 3 times during dinner before Brenda arrived. Eleanor did the same thing when she was pregnant with Michael. Stephen's expression softened. Congratulations, by the way. Tears welled up. I was going to tell him tonight. I thought maybe it would fix things. Excuse. Nothing fixes a man who lets his mistress call his wife worthless. But it does give you leverage. Tell him you know about the affair, you are willing to divorce quietly, but you want financial security for the baby. He'll be so relieved to avoid a fight that he might get careless. Jessica wiped her eyes. You've thought this through. I've been preparing for months. I just needed someone I could trust. Stephen stood, walked to the window overlooking the lake. Jessica, I need to know something. If you were part of this, if you helped Michael steal that money, tell me now. I'll get you immunity, but I need the truth. She joined him at the window. This morning I found out I'm pregnant. I was planning to tell my husband at your birthday dinner because I thought a baby might save our marriage. Does that sound like someone planning to steal millions and flee the country? Stephen studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. No, it doesn't. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a business card. This is Rachel King, a criminal defense attorney. If anything goes wrong, call her immediately. Don't talk to police without her present. You think it'll come to that? I think Margaret is smarter and more ruthless than Michael. She's been planning this for years. She won't go down without a fight. Stephen's voice hardened. And she'll sacrifice anyone to protect herself, including you. Jessica pocketed the card. When do I start? Tonight, go home, act normal. Tomorrow, start gathering evidence. I'll work from my end, securing company records, freezing what accounts I can without alerting them. He paused. Jessica, this is going to get ugly. Are you prepared for that? She thought about the pregnancy test sitting in her bathroom, about 7 years of feeling invisible, about the word that kept echoing in her head, worthless. Yes, she said firmly. I'm ready. They walked to the front entrance. Stephen's hand on her shoulder was warm, solid. One more thing, he said. Whatever happens, remember, you are not worthless. You never were. They needed you to believe that so you wouldn't question them. But you're questioning now. That makes you dangerous. Jessica drove home through the dark roads of Lake Forest, the burner phone heavy in her purse. The penthouse was empty when she arrived. Michael's car wasn't in the garage. She went to his study, the locked room he claimed was for business privacy. She'd never pushed, never questioned. The lock took her 15 minutes to pick with a hairpin and YouTube tutorial. Her hands shook, but she managed it. Inside, she found file cabinets, a safe, stacks of documents. She photographed everything she could, working methodically the way she used to document construction sites. Bank statements, emails printed and filed by date, transaction records, and then, in the bottom drawer, a burner phone identical to the one Stephen had given her. She powered it on. Text messages filled the screen. Margaret, transfer complete. 3.2 million moved to KY account. Michael, what about the Singapore setup? Margaret, Stephen's getting suspicious. We need to accelerate. Michael, and Jessica? Margaret, she's the perfect patsy, trusting, isolated, and her signatures are already on everything. When this blows up, she takes the fall. Jessica's hands trembled as she photographed every message. She was carefully replacing the phone when she heard it. The front door opening. Footsteps. Michael was home. Jessica slipped the file drawer closed silently, pocketed her phone, and tried to slow her racing heart. She heard Michael's footsteps moving through the penthouse, toward the kitchen, not the study. She had maybe 30 seconds. She relocked the study door, testing it twice to ensure it engaged properly, then walked calmly toward the master bedroom, passing the kitchen entrance as if she'd just been heading to bed. Michael stood at the counter, tie loosened, pouring whiskey. You're still up, he said without looking at her. Couldn't sleep. Jessica kept her voice neutral. We need to talk. Not tonight. Michael, I'm pregnant. The whiskey bottle stopped mid-pour. He set it down carefully, turned to face her. You're what? 10 weeks. I found out this morning. She touched her stomach, the gesture now deliberate. I was going to tell you at dinner before... She let the sentence trail off. Michael's expression was unreadable. Are you sure? 3 tests, doctor's appointment scheduled for next week. Jessica moved closer, but not too close. I know about Brenda. I've known for a while. I was hoping we could work through it, but after tonight, Jessica, it's complicated. It's really not. She kept her voice steady. You're having an affair. Your father just threw you out of his house, and now I'm carrying your child. So here's what I'm thinking. I'll agree to a quiet divorce. No drama, no scandal. But I need financial security for this baby. Michael's shoulders relaxed slightly. That's Reasonable. I'll need to review our finances. Make sure I understand what we have, what I'm entitled to. His jaw tightened. My lawyers will handle that. I designed this penthouse, Michael. I'm not an idiot about money. I just want to see the accounts, understand what's in my name versus yours. Fair, right? She could see him calculating, weighing risks. Fine, he said finally. Tomorrow, I'll pull everything together. Tonight, Jessica pressed, I want to look at the files in your study just to get a sense of things. His expression shuddered. Those are business files, company confidential. Then the business files, I don't care about Hayes Industries, just our personal accounts. Jessica, it's late. We're both exhausted. Let's deal with this tomorrow with clear heads. She nodded, playing the compliant wife one more time. Okay, tomorrow. She went to the bedroom, listened to Michael make a phone call in the kitchen, his voice too low to make out words. Then his footsteps moved toward the study. The lock clicked open. Jessica lay in bed, phone hidden under her pillow, and waited. At 2 in the morning, Michael finally came to bed, smelling of whiskey and stress. He didn't touch her. She waited until his breathing deepened, then slipped out of bed and went to the guest room, locking the door. She texted Stephen from the burner phone. Got photos of texts between Em and Margaret. They're planning to pin everything on me. Moving fast. His reply came immediately. Good work. Stay safe. Don't go back to the penthouse alone tomorrow. Jessica finally slept, the phone clutched in her hand. She woke to her regular phone buzzing. Lauren calling. Hey, Jessica answered groggily. Thank God you answered. Are you okay? Michael called me at midnight asking if you'd told me about the affair. He sounded paranoid. Jessica sat up. What did you tell him? That I didn't know what he was talking about and to leave me alone. Jess, what's going on? I can't explain right now, but if Michael contacts you again, tell me immediately. Don't engage with him. You're scaring me. I'm scared too. I'll call you later, I promise. Jessica ended the call and checked the time. 8:30 a.m. She'd slept through her alarm. The penthouse was silent. She found a note on the kitchen counter in Michael's handwriting. Meeting with lawyers all day. We'll talk tonight. Jessica breathed easier. She had hours. She called Stephen. Michael's gone for the day. I'm going to copy everything in his study and email it to myself. Use a secure email, not your regular account. Create something new, random. Don't use your name. Okay, what are you doing? Meeting with the board. I'm going to recommend freezing certain accounts pending an internal audit. Margaret will fight it, but I have the votes. It'll buy us time. Jessica spent 3 hours methodically photographing, scanning, and uploading documents. She created an email account under the name Jane Doe 2467 and sent everything to it, then to Rachel King, the lawyer Stephen had recommended. By noon, she was done. She stood in the study, looking at all the evidence of Michael's betrayal, and felt nothing. No sadness, no anger, just cold clarity. Her phone buzzed. Stephen, board meeting's done. Margaret knows something's wrong. She stormed out. Be careful. Jessica grabbed her purse and left the penthouse. She drove to her therapist's office for her regular 1 o'clock appointment, grateful for the normalcy of routine. Dr. Pacheco greeted her warmly. How are you, Jessica? Pregnant, getting divorced, and apparently implicated in embezzlement I didn't commit. So, Tuesday. To her credit, Dr. Pacheco didn't flinch. Let's start from the beginning. Jessica talked for 40 minutes, the words pouring out. The affair, the dinner, Stephen's alliance, the evidence she'd gathered. You've taken control of your narrative, Dr. Pacheco observed. That's significant growth from where you were 6 months ago. I don't feel in control. I feel terrified. Terror and control aren't mutually exclusive. Sometimes courage is just fear that's learned to make decisions. Jessica left the session feeling steadier. Her phone buzzed as she reached her car. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a woman's voice, distorted. Stop digging, or next time it won't be your things. The line went dead. Jessica's blood went cold. She called Stephen immediately. Someone just threatened me. Female voice, distorted. Where are you? Therapist's office on Michigan Avenue. Stay there. I'm sending security. Stephen, what's happening? His voice was grim. Margaret's making her move. Get somewhere safe, now. Jessica looked around the parking garage, suddenly aware of shadows, cameras, exit routes. A black Mercedes pulled up beside her car, the window lowered. Margaret sat in the driver's seat, perfectly composed. Get in, Jessica. We need to talk. Jessica didn't move. I'm not getting in your car, Margaret. Then I'll make this simple. Margaret held up her phone, showing a text conversation. See these messages? They're between you and a man named David Carter. You've been planning to steal company funds with him for 8 months. I don't know anyone named David Carter. The FBI will find differently. They'll find an email account under your name, bank accounts, hotel records, text messages, a very clear pattern of conspiracy. Margaret's smile was cold. Or you get in the car, we have a civilized conversation, and maybe I help you avoid prison. Jessica's mind raced. Stephen's security was coming, but would they arrive in time? She got in the car. Margaret pulled out of the parking garage smoothly, merging into Michigan Avenue traffic. You've made things very difficult, Jessica. Stephen was never supposed to take your side. I'm his daughter-in-law. You're a convenient vessel Michael married for appearances. We needed someone educated enough to seem credible, but trusting enough to manipulate. You were perfect. Margaret turned onto Lakeshore Drive, heading north. The plan was simple. Michael courts you, marries you, gets you to sign things. In 3 years, we file for divorce, blame you for financial improprieties, and you walk away with a settlement to stay quiet. Clean, easy. But Michael fell in love with Brenda. Michael's an idiot. Brenda was supposed to be a distraction, someone to keep him occupied while we moved money. Instead, he got attached, started making promises, became sloppy. Jessica watched the lake pass by her window. So you moved up your timeline. Stephen's getting old. Soon he'll want to retire, hand over the company. I can't have loose ends when that happens. Margaret glanced at her. You were always a loose end, Jessica. I just needed to tie you off properly. By framing me for embezzlement, by giving you a choice. Sign a confession admitting you were coerced by Michael to sign documents you didn't understand. Testify against him. In exchange, you get immunity and $5 million. Jessica's pulse quickened. You're offering to pay me to betray Michael? I'm offering to pay you to save yourself. Michael's going down either way. Stephen's too angry to protect him now. The only question is whether you go down with him. The car turned off Lakeshore Drive, heading toward the industrial areas near the river. Where are you taking me? Somewhere private. My lawyers are waiting. You sign the paperwork. We all move forward. Jessica's phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't dare check it. What if I refuse? Margaret's expression hardened. Then the FBI gets an anonymous tip about accounts under your name. You'll be arrested within hours. And here's the thing about federal prosecutors, Jessica. They don't care about truth. They care about conviction rates. You're a beautiful, educated woman married to a billionaire's son. The jury will want to believe you are guilty. Stephen won't let that happen. Stephen's in the hospital. Jessica's breath caught. What? He collapsed during the board meeting. Doctors think it's a stroke. He's sedated, can't speak. Margaret's voice was almost sympathetic. I'm very sorry, Jessica. I know you'd grown close. Lies. It had to be lies, but doubt crept in. Stephen was 67. Stress could... Jessica's phone buzzed again. Then again. You should answer that, Margaret said. Might be the hospital. Jessica pulled out her phone with shaking hands. 7 missed calls from an unknown number. She answered the most recent. Hello? Mrs. Hayes? A professional female voice. This is Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Your father-in-law, Stephen Hayes, has been admitted. He's listed you as his emergency contact. Jessica's eyes widened. She'd never been his emergency contact. Is he okay? He's stable but unconscious. Can you come to the hospital? I'm on my way. Jessica ended the call, looked at Margaret. Take me to Northwestern, now. After you sign, now Margaret, or I start screaming for help at the next red light. They stared at each other. The car slowed at a stoplight. Jessica's hand moved to the door handle. Margaret turned the car around. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to Northwestern Memorial's emergency entrance. Jessica jumped out before the car fully stopped. She ran inside, found the ICU, showed her ID. The nurse looked confused. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hayes, but we didn't call you. Mr. Hayes isn't a patient here." Jessica's blood turned to ice. She spun around. The black Mercedes was gone. Her phone rang, Stephen's number. "Jessica, where are you?" His voice was strong, healthy. "Northwestern Memorial. Margaret told me you had a stroke." "I'm fine. Where's Margaret?" "She just drove away." "Stephen, she tried to get me to sign a confession. She said, 'Get out of there. Right now. Don't go home. Don't go anywhere Margaret would know about.'" "Where do I go?" "Lauren's apartment. I'll meet you there." Jessica flagged a cab, gave Lauren's address on the north side. She texted Lauren, "Coming to your place. Emergency. Don't ask questions yet." Lauren's replied, "Doors unlocked. Wine's ready." The cab dropped her off 30 minutes later. Jessica practically ran up the 3 flights of stairs. Lauren opened the door before she could knock. "Jess, what?" Jessica collapsed into her arms and started crying. They sat on Lauren's worn couch while Jessica explained everything. The affair, the dinner, Stephen's alliance, Margaret's threats. "That family is insane," Lauren said. "You need to go to the police." "With what proof?" "Everything points to me." Margaret's made sure of that. A knock at the door. Both women froze. "It's Stephen," a voice called. Lauren checked the peephole, then opened the door. Stephen entered, looking exhausted. Behind him was a woman Jessica didn't recognize. Brunette, elegant, familiar somehow. "Jessica," Stephen said, "there's someone you need to meet." The woman stepped forward. It was Brenda. Jessica stood abruptly, her chair scraping against Lauren's hardwood floor. "Get her out of here." "Jessica, wait," Stephen said, hands raised. "It's not what you think. She called me worthless in front of your entire family." Brenda's expression was pained. "I know, and I'm sorry, but I had to sell it. They couldn't know who I really am." "Which is what, exactly?" Brenda pulled out a badge. "FBI Special Agent Brenda Walsh, White Collar Division." Jessica stared at the badge, then at Stephen. "I don't understand." "Sit," Stephen said gently. "This is going to take a minute." They sat. Lauren hovered protectively near Jessica. Brenda spoke first, her voice different now, professional, measured. 2 years ago, Medicare fraud investigators flagged Hayes Industries for unusual billing patterns. They brought in the FBI. I was assigned to go undercover and determine the scope of the fraud. "Medicare fraud?" Jessica's head spun. Stephen nodded grimly. "Margaret's been inflating costs on medical supply contracts, billing Medicare for products never delivered, routing the excess funds through shell companies. Over 5 years, she stole $47 million. But the Singapore expansion, a smokescreen," Brenda explained. "Margaret needed to move money out of the country before auditors caught on. She brought Michael in, convinced him he was being clever, but really he was just her puppet. And me? You were the scapegoat," Brenda said quietly. "Margaret forged your digital signatures on hundreds of documents. When the fraud was discovered, you'd take the fall as the architect's wife who got greedy. Michael would play the betrayed husband. Margaret would emerge as the loyal CFO who helped uncover the crime." Jessica felt sick. "But the affair, Michael and you, was real, unfortunately. That wasn't part of my cover." Brenda looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Michael approached me at a company event. He was clearly unhappy in his marriage, looking for attention. I should have shut it down immediately, but my handler thought it could help me get closer to his communications with Margaret." "So you slept with my husband for the investigation?" "No," Brenda's voice was firm. "I never slept with Michael. We met publicly, I listened to him complain, and I gathered intelligence. The hotel rooms? We'd sit in the lobby bar. He told everyone we went upstairs to maintain his ego. I let him believe I was impressed by his money." Stephen interjected. "6 months ago, Brenda came to me privately, showed me what she'd found. We've been working together to build a case." "Then why the performance at the dinner?" Jessica demanded. "Why humiliate me?" "Because I needed Margaret to believe we were on the same side," Brenda said. "She'd been testing me, seeing if I was ruthless enough to help her frame you. When I called you worthless, It was the final proof she needed. After that dinner, she brought me into her inner circle, showed me everything, including how she planned to kill me. The room went silent. What? Stephen's voice was sharp. Jessica pulled out her phone, showed them the threatening text from earlier. Unknown number. Female voice. Brenda examined it, her expression darkening. That's not Margaret's phone, but I can trace this. There's more, Jessica said. Margaret admitted she's been setting me up. Fake email accounts, bank records, text messages with someone named David Carter. David Carter is one of Margaret's accountants. He's already cooperating with us. Brenda made notes on her phone. What exactly did Margaret say? Jessica recounted the car ride, Margaret's threats, the fake hospital call. She's panicking, Stephen said. The board meeting this morning went badly for her. I froze accounts she needed to access. She's trying to tie up loose ends. I'm not a loose end, Jessica said. I'm a person, which is why we need to finish this now. Brenda looked at Stephen. We have enough for an arrest warrant. Margaret, Michael, and 3 others. But we need Jessica's testimony to make it stick. What kind of testimony? We need you to wear a wire. Get Margaret to confess to the frame-up on tape. Jessica laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. You want me to meet with the woman who just tried to trap me into signing a false confession? Who might want me dead? I'll be right there, Brenda assured her. Hidden, armed, with backup. The second you're in danger, we move in. And if something goes wrong? Brenda met her eyes. I won't let that happen. I owe you that much. Jessica looked at Stephen. You think this will work? I think Margaret is smart enough to realize she's been caught unless she eliminates you as a witness. If you approach her, claim you want to make a deal, she'll see it as a chance to control you. And she won't be able to resist gloating. Villains really do that? Confess while gloating? When they think they've won, every time. Lauren grabbed Jessica's hand. You don't have to do this. You could just disappear. I have family in Colorado. We could leave tonight. Jessica thought about the pregnancy test, about 7 years of being called just a wife, about the word worthless echoing in her head. No, she said firmly. I'm done running. I'm done being the victim in someone else's story. She looked at Brenda. What do I need to do? They spent 3 hours preparing Jessica at a safe house the FBI maintained in Wrigleyville. Brenda walked her through the technical setup, a tiny microphone clipped inside her bra, a panic button disguised as a bracelet charm. Press it twice quickly if you're in immediate danger, Brenda instructed. We'll be in a van half a block away. Response time, under 30 seconds. Jessica's hand shook as Brenda adjusted the wire. What if she searches me? She won't. You're not a threat in her mind. You're a desperate woman looking for a way out. That's your power right now. She underestimates you. Stephen knocked and entered. I just got off the phone with Margaret, told her you came to me, said you want to testify against Michael in exchange for immunity. She asked if I believed you. What did you say? That you seemed sincere but naive, that I wasn't sure if I could trust you given your signatures on the documents. Stephen's expression was apologetic. She needs to believe we're not allied. Will she meet with Jessica? Brenda asked. Tonight, 8 o'clock. Her office at Hayes Industries. Jessica checked her watch. 4:30, 3.5 hours. I should call Michael, she said. If I disappear without explanation, he might warn Margaret. Brenda handed her a clean phone. Use this. Keep it short. Stick to the script. Jessica dialed. Michael answered on the first ring. Where are you? He demanded. You were supposed to meet me at the penthouse. I'm staying at Lauren's tonight. I need space to think. About what? About what's best for me and the baby. Your father offered me a deal. Testify against you, get immunity. Silence. Jessica, you can't. I haven't decided, but Michael, if everything comes out, if I end up charged with crimes I didn't commit. Her voice broke authentically. I need to protect our child. My father is manipulating you. Your mistress called me worthless in front of your family. Your father defended me. Who's manipulating whom? More silence. Margaret wants to meet with you, Michael said finally. She called me an hour ago, said she can help you if you're smart. Maybe I should talk to her. No, Jessica, don't. She's dangerous. More dangerous than federal prison? She ended the call before he could respond. Brenda nodded approvingly. That was good. You sounded desperate, but not defeated. Perfect. The hours crawled bent. Jessica tried to eat but couldn't. She paced the safe house, practicing what she'd say, how she'd react. At 7:30, they left in two vehicles. Brenda rode with Jessica in an unmarked sedan, two other agents following in a van. The Hayes Industries building loomed against the Chicago skyline, a glass and steel monument to Stephen's success. At night, mostly empty, it felt like a mausoleum. We'll park in visitor parking, Brenda said. You go in alone. Take the elevator to the 14th floor. Margaret's office is the corner suite. We'll have eyes on you through building cameras, and the wire will pick up everything. What if she's not alone? Then you say you're not comfortable and leave. Don't engage if anyone else is there. Jessica nodded, her mouth dry. They pulled into the garage. Jessica got out, smoothing her dress. Hey, Brenda called. For what it's worth, you're the bravest person I've met doing this job, and I'm sorry for everything I said at that dinner. I meant none of it. Just make sure you catch her. Jessica walked into the building. The lobby was empty except for a security guard who checked her ID and waved her through. The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt endless. The doors opened, plush carpeting, dim lighting, abstract art on walls. Margaret's office door was open, warm light spilling into the hallway. Jessica walked in. Margaret sat behind a massive desk, perfectly composed in a cream suit. No one else was visible. Jessica, Margaret said warmly, thank you for coming. Please sit. Jessica sat in the leather chair facing the desk, her heart hammering. Can I offer you water? Tea? No, thank you. I just want to understand my options. Margaret folded her hands. Of course, you're in a difficult position. I sympathize. Michael was reckless, Stephen's being emotional, and you're caught in the middle. Your brother stole company money using my name. He did, and that's unforgivable, which is why I'm prepared to help you. But I need something in return. What? Margaret pulled out a document, slid it across the desk. A simple statement. You confirm that Michael pressured you to sign documents without explanation, that you trusted him as your husband, that you had no knowledge of what those documents contained. Jessica scanned the paper. This makes it sound like I was completely ignorant. Because you were. That's not an insult, Jessica. It's a fact. You trusted the wrong man. And if I sign this? Full immunity, $5 million, a letter of recommendation to any architecture firm you choose. You start over, completely clean. It sounded too good, too easy. What happens to Michael? Federal prison, 10 to 15 years. Margaret's expression didn't flicker. He made his choices, now he pays for them. And Stephen? Retires quietly, hands the company over to me, lives out his remaining years in peace. You mean you take over everything? I've been running this company for 20 years while Stephen and Michael played billionaire. It's time someone who understands the business had control. Margaret leaned forward. I'm offering you a gift, Jessica. Freedom, security, justice. All you have to do is sign. Jessica stared at the document, thinking about Brenda's instructions. Get her to admit the frame-up. Get specifics. This statement is incomplete, Jessica said slowly. It doesn't mention the David Carter accounts. Margaret blinked. What accounts? The ones you created in my name. Email correspondence, bank transfers, hotel records. You told me about them in the car. I said a lot of things to see if you'd panic. I needed to know if you were working with Stephen against me. Are you saying those accounts don't exist? Margaret smiled. I'm saying if they did exist, they'd be very hard to trace back to me. Digital forensics is tricky, especially when the signatures appear legitimate. Because you forged them. That's a strong accusation. You told me you needed someone educated but trusting. That I was perfect. That you planned to frame me for Michael's crimes. Margaret's smile faded. I said that to scare you into cooperating. Obviously it worked. Here you are. Jessica felt frustration building. Margaret was too careful, too smart. What if I don't sign? Then you face charges. And Jessica, I've been building this frame for years. You'll lose. Stephen won't let that happen. Stephen's an old man who's sentimentally attached to you because you remind him of his dead wife. That sentimentality doesn't outweigh evidence. What evidence? Your signatures on 437 documents authorizing fraudulent transactions. Your IP address accessing accounts in the Cayman Islands. Security footage of you entering buildings where meetings with Shell company representatives occurred. Margaret ticked items off on her fingers. Should I continue? I never entered those buildings. The footage says otherwise. Amazing that what you can do with modern technology. Margaret's expression turned cold. You're not as smart as you think, Jessica. You designed pretty buildings. I designed an entire scheme that's taken 5 years to perfect. You can't win. You're admitting you framed me. I'm explaining reality. There's a difference. Margaret stood, walked to the window. Michael was weak, Stephen was blind, you were convenient, and I was patient. Now I'm giving you one chance to walk away. Take it. Jessica thought about the baby growing inside her, about the life she could build with $5 million in immunity. But she also thought about Brenda, bleeding in a hospital, about Stephen, fighting to preserve integrity, about the word worthless. No, Jessica said clearly. I won't sign because you're wrong about something. What's that? You said I can't win, but I already have. Margaret turned confused. Jessica tapped the bracelet on her wrist. Brenda's voice came through hidden speakers. FBI, nobody move! The door burst open. 4 agents, weapons drawn. Margaret's face went white, then red, then absolutely still. Margaret Hayes, Brenda announced. You're under arrest for Medicare fraud, money laundering, forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud, and intimidation of a witness. As agents handcuffed Margaret, the woman finally looked at Jessica. You wore a wire, she said, almost impressed. I learned from the best, Jessica replied. You taught me that people will underestimate you if you let them. Thanks for the lesson. They led Margaret away. Stephen appeared in the doorway, his face a mixture of relief and grief. It's done, Jessica said quietly. He nodded. It's done. 3 months later, Jessica sat in a federal courtroom, 7 months pregnant, her hand resting on her swollen belly. The baby kicked, reminding her why she was here. The prosecution had done their job well. Evidence mounted like building blocks, financial records, emails, testimony from David Carter, and 4 other co-conspirators who'd taken deals. The Medicare fraud totaled $47 million. The money laundering added another $23 million. And all of it led back to Margaret. Michael sat at the defense table beside his sister, looking smaller than Jessica remembered. He'd tried to cut a deal, but the FBI wanted Margaret more than they wanted him. His testimony had been devastating, admitting he'd helped create shell companies, signed false documents, recruited Jessica specifically because she was trusting and wouldn't ask questions. On the witness stand, he'd looked at Jessica only once. I'm sorry, he'd said, voice breaking. I loved you. I just loved money more. Now it was Jessica's turn to testify. She took the stand, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Andrea Solis, walked her through everything. The marriage, the isolation, the signatures, the discovery. Mrs. Hayes, Andrea said, Margaret's defense claims you were a willing participant who's now trying to avoid consequences. How do you respond? Jessica took a breath. 7 years ago, I was a successful architect. I had my own firm, my own clients, my own life. I gave that up to support my husband's career. Not because he demanded it, but because I believed in partnership, in sacrifice, in love. Her voice grew stronger. Margaret Hayes counted on that. She counted on me being too trusting to question, too isolated to have allies, too afraid to fight back. She was right for a long time. But she made one mistake. What was that? She assumed being called worthless would destroy me. Instead, it woke me up. The courtroom was silent. Andrea showed the jury the wire recording. Margaret's voice filled the room, cold and calculating. You're not as smart as you think, Jessica. I designed an entire scheme that's taken 5 years to perfect. You can't win. Michael was weak. Stephen was blind. You were convenient. And I was patient. The jury's faces showed everything. Cross-examination was brutal. Margaret's lawyer tried to paint Jessica as a bitter ex-wife seeking revenge, But every question led back to the evidence. The forged signatures, the shell companies, the Medicare fraud. On the third day, Stephen testified. He looked older, thinner, but his voice was steady. "My sister Margaret is brilliant," he said. "I've always known that, but somewhere along the way, her brilliance turned to arrogance. She believed she was entitled to what I'd built, and she was willing to destroy anyone who got in her way, including an innocent woman whose only crime was marrying my son." He looked directly at Margaret. "I loved you," he said. "I wish that had been enough." Margaret stared back, her expression unreadable. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Deliberation took 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge was direct. "Margaret Hayes, you systematically stole from Medicare, a program designed to help our most vulnerable citizens. You defrauded your own company. You framed an innocent woman, and you showed no remorse." Margaret's sentence, 15 years in federal prison. Michael, who'd cooperated but still participated willingly, 12 years. David Carter and the other accountants, various sentences from 3 to 7 years. Jessica stood outside the courthouse afterward, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. She read a prepared statement. "I came into this marriage believing love was enough. I learned the hard way that integrity matters more. No one should be made to feel worthless for trusting the wrong person. If my story helps even one person recognize financial abuse, then something good came from this." Stephen stood beside her, solid and supportive. Brenda, cleared by internal affairs for her undercover conduct, nodded from the edge of the crowd. Jessica's phone buzzed. "Lauren, you did it. I'm so proud of you. Come to my place. Wine for me, sparkling water for you, and we're celebrating." As Jessica walked to the car, a reporter called out, "Mrs. Hayes, what's next for you?" She turned, smiled. "Architecture. I'm rebuilding my firm." "And the baby?" Jessica touched her stomach. "The baby gets a mother who knows her worth." 1 year later, Jessica stood in front of a modern building in Chicago's West Loop. Blueprints rolled under her arm. The groundbreaking ceremony for the Brenda Walsh Center, a shelter and resource hub for women escaping financial abuse, was set to begin in an hour. The building was her design. Clean lines, abundant natural light, spaces that felt safe without feeling institutional. Every detail had been chosen with care, from the private consultation rooms to the children's play area to the rooftop garden where residents could find peace. Brenda would have loved it. Special Agent Brenda Walsh had died 6 months ago. Not from the gunshot Margaret had inflicted during the arrest. She'd survived that. But cancer, aggressive and sudden, had taken her in 8 weeks. At her funeral, Brenda's mother had hugged Jessica. "She talked about you," the older woman had said. "Said you reminded her why she became an agent, to protect people who deserve better." Jessica had cried then, really cried, for the woman who'd insulted her at a family dinner and then saved her life. Now, standing in front of the building that bore Brenda's name, Jessica felt something like peace. A car pulled up. Stephen got out, moving carefully. He'd aged in the past year, grief over Margaret mixing with relief that the truth had come out. He'd stepped down as CEO, handed the company to a board of directors he trusted, and spent his time in quieter pursuits. "It's beautiful," he said, looking at the building. "You did remarkable work." "We did," Jessica corrected. "Your foundation funded it. Your design brought it to life." He handed her an envelope. "I've been holding on to this. Felt like today was the right time." Jessica opened it. Inside was a letter in Brenda's handwriting, dated 2 weeks before her death. "Dear Jessica, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for that. I had plans to see your building completed, to watch your kid grow up, to be the annoying friend who gives unsolicited advice. But since I can't do that, here's my last piece of advice. Don't let what happened define you. Not the betrayal, not the trial, not even the victory. You're so much more than this chapter. When I called you worthless at that dinner, I saw something in your eyes. Not defeat, recognition. Like you'd heard it before, maybe in your own head. That's the real crime, isn't it? We internalize the worst things people say about us and carry them around like truth. So here's what I need you to know. You were never worthless. Not when you gave up your career for love. Not when you trusted the wrong people. Not when you fought back. You were always valuable, always whole, always enough. Build beautiful things, raise a good kid, help people who need it. And when someone tries to tell you who you are, remember, you're the only one who gets to write that story. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for testifying. Thank you for reminding me why this job matters. Love, Brenda. Jessica wiped her eyes, carefully folded the letter, and tucked it into her jacket pocket. Stephen was quiet for a moment, then said, I have something too. Not a letter, a proposal. I don't need more money, Stephen. It's not money, it's an offer. Hayes Industries needs a new director of corporate integrity, someone to redesign our ethics programs, create accountability structures, rebuild trust, someone who understands what it's like when systems fail people. Jessica looked at him. You want me to work for Hayes Industries? I want you to remake it into something better. Keep your architecture firm. This would be consulting, part-time, your own terms. But Jessica, you have perspective nobody else has. You have seen what happens when good people stay silent. I need someone who won't. She considered it, the company that had been used to hurt her, now asking her to help heal it. I'll think about it, she said finally. People began arriving for the ceremony. News crews set up cameras. Women who'd been helped by the foundation's preliminary programs gathered, some with children, all with stories of survival. The mayor gave a speech. Stephen cut the ribbon, and then they asked Jessica to say a few words. She stood at the podium, looking at the crowd, and thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. Scared, isolated, believing she was worthless because people she'd trusted had said so. A year ago, Jessica began, someone I'd never met sat across from me at a family dinner and called me worthless. She needed me to believe it, and for a moment, I almost did. The crowd listened, rapt. But here's what I've learned. Worth isn't something other people give you. It's something you claim. And sometimes claiming it means fighting people who want to define you by what they can take from you. She looked at Stephen, who nodded encouragement. This building exists because people believed women deserve better than being told they're worthless. It exists because one woman gave her life to protect others. And it exists because I finally understood something important. Jessica touched the letter in her pocket. I'm not worthless. I'm not perfect either. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. I stayed too long in situations that hurt me. But those mistakes don't define my worth. They define my growth. She gestured to the building behind her. This is what happens when you stop believing people who tear you down and start building something that lifts others up. This is what happens when you realize being called worthless is just someone else's fear that you'll discover how valuable you really are. Applause filled the street. After the ceremony, after the photos and interviews and handshakes, Jessica drove to her new office. Small, independent, nothing like the penthouse she'd once designed. But it was hers. On her desk sat a framed photo. Her daughter, Emma Stephen Hayes Carter, 3 months old, sleeping peacefully. Jessica had given her daughter Stephen's name as a middle name to honor the man who'd seen her worth when she couldn't see it herself. And she'd reclaimed her maiden name Carter as a reminder that identity was something you chose. Her phone rang. Rachel King, the lawyer who'd guided her through the trial. Jessica, I'm calling about the wrongful conviction advocacy project we discussed. We've secured funding to help 3 women overturn fraud convictions. Would you be willing to consult? Share your story. Help us identify similar patterns of financial abuse and coercion. Yes, Jessica said without hesitation. Absolutely yes, because that's what survivors did. They turned pain into purpose. That evening, Jessica sat at her drafting table, Emma sleeping in a bassinet nearby, and sketched. Not a building this time, a memorial. She decided to donate the $5 million trust that the government had returned from recovered funds, money that had been stolen using her name, now returned to her legally. She'd split it between cancer research in Brenda's name and wrongful conviction advocacy in her mother's name. The memorial would be simple, a bench in Millennium Park with a plaque, for those who were called worthless, but proved priceless, in memory of Brenda Walsh and Eleanor Hayes, built by those who survived, for those still fighting. Jessica looked at her daughter, touched her soft hair, and whispered, "You'll grow up knowing your worth. I promise you that." Her phone buzzed one last time. Stephen, thank you for everything, for fighting, for forgiving, for being exactly who you are. Jessica smiled, turned off her phone, and returned to her drafting table. Outside, Chicago glittered in the darkness, full of possibility. And inside, Jessica Carter Hayes finally felt something she hadn't felt in years. Free. Would you ever imagine your entire marriage collapsing from one text message? Picture this. You're standing outside your own luxurious home, suitcase hastily packed, watching helplessly as the woman carrying your husband's child moves comfortably into your life, your bed, your future. This isn't just betrayal, it's destruction, cold and calculated. For Maribel Grant, this was her harsh reality, the moment her seemingly devoted husband, Alistair, cast her aside like an outdated accessory to accommodate his pregnant mistress, Dahlia Torres. But the story doesn't end there, because just next door, a billionaire named Gabriel Moretti watched the drama unfold, waiting quietly to rewrite Maribel's shattered future. Flashback to years earlier. Maribel and Alistair's love began innocently at a modest networking event. At the time, Alistair was barely scraping by. His entire fortune could fit inside a coffee cup, yet he brimmed with dazzling charisma and grand ambitions. Maribel, then a passionate social policy student, dreamed of changing the world one neighborhood at a time. Over coffee dates, whispered promises, and moonlit walks, their love story bloomed. Alistair dropped to one knee beneath a canopy of dogwood blossoms, promising forever, and she believed him completely. Yet forever didn't account for success. As Alistair's tech startup exploded, he became the city's golden boy. Magazine covers hailed him, television interviews praised him, and society's elite embraced him. With every step upward, Maribel felt him slipping further from her grasp. Suddenly, she was invisible amid glittering gala dinners and exclusive parties. Ambition consumed Alistair until the only reflection Maribel saw in his eyes was impatience, irritation, and finally indifference. She'd sacrificed dreams and sidelined her aspirations to support him, never realizing she was nurturing the very fame that would destroy their marriage. Engagement prompt. Have you ever watched wealth and success completely transform someone you love? Comment 1 if you've seen this firsthand, or 2 if you believe you would never let money change who you truly are. Maribel first suspected trouble when Alistair's business trips stretched from days to weeks, and the nightly phone calls became an afterthought. She'd be up late, tracing her finger along the polished wood of their dining table, where they used to share homemade dinners. Instead of calling to say he'd be home for the weekend, Alistair texted empty apologies about work emergencies. The warmth she once saw in his eyes seemed snuffed out by ambition and something else. Something she couldn't identify, but felt pulling him further away. She was no stranger to the ways success could mold a person, but she clung to the idea that this was all temporary. He'd be back to normal once the next contract was secured, the next acquisition finalized. It wasn't until she stumbled on an unfamiliar name lighting up Alistair's phone that her doubts congealed into genuine fear. Dahlia Torres. She remembered standing in the kitchen, half-dressed in pajamas, as the phone vibrated across the counter. A seductive message popped up, replete with affectionate nicknames and references to future getaways. It felt like a lightning strike in the center of her chest. When Maribel confronted Alistair, his denial was instant. He brushed it off as harmless flirtation and over-friendly contact. For a while, she forced herself to believe him. Maybe she was too paranoid, too consumed by the idea that money and fame changed everyone eventually. Maybe she just had to stay strong, like so many spouses in high-pressure relationships. But nothing improved. Late-night dinners with clients continued, conference calls never ended, and their once loving home felt like a museum after hours, silent, lonely, echoing with memories of a past that Maribel was desperately trying to preserve. In her darkest hours, she considered walking out, but she still believed in those wedding vows, to support one another, even when illusions started to crumble. She told herself if she held on long enough, if she could just remind him of what mattered, then the old Alistair might return. Perhaps, she reasoned, stress had warped his priorities, and he just needed a push to see how much he stood to lose. Engagement prompt. Comment with a 3 if you've ever had a gnawing suspicion you tried to ignore. and 4 if you always confront problems head-on. Despite her mounting suspicions, Maribel willed herself to stay calm, confiding only in her closest friend, Alicia Hoffman. Alicia and Maribel had met in college and bonded over their love of volunteering at local shelters. Over coffee in Alicia's modest but cozy apartment, Maribel spilled the details. Alistair's abrupt change of personality, the suspicious text, the lonely nights. Alicia urged her to demand honest answers. "You deserve the truth," she'd said, worry lining her brow. It was the swift betrayal that stunned Maribel most of all. She had expected denials, maybe a slow admission, but nothing prepared her for the day Dalia Torres, a breathtakingly poised woman with luminous eyes and an undeniable air of confidence, strolled right through Maribel's front door as if she owned the place. Her slim hand rested protectively over her stomach, the hint of a baby bump obvious beneath her fitted blouse. In a single seismic conversation, Alistair confessed that Dahlia was pregnant with his child and needed space, comfort, care. Or, as Dahlia had put it herself, "I'm moving in. I won't be subjected to stress in my condition." The arrogance dripping from her voice made Maribel's blood run cold. "Where am I supposed to go?" Maribel asked, half hysterical, tears threatening to choke her words. She still remembered the hollow feeling in her chest, as though every last bit of security had suddenly crumbled. Alistair had the audacity to act like it was a trivial question. "Pack your things," he said flatly. "I'll arrange a financial settlement soon, but Dahlia and I need the house to ourselves." In a daze, Maribel stuffed her belongings into suitcases, her heart pounding so furiously it sounded like a war drum in her ears. She came across photos from their honeymoon in Bali, a keepsake box of letters from him proclaiming devotion. Each item cut deeper into her, reminding her how heartbreak could unfold in the blink of an eye, how one moment's joy could be erased by a single betrayal. She threw everything into her trunk and drove off, not even knowing her destination. All she knew was that she needed distance, clarity, and most of all, a moment to breathe. Engagement prompt. If you've ever had to leave a situation on the spot, type 5 to share your solidarity with Maribel. That same evening, Maribel found herself sitting alone in her parked car by a bustling downtown street. The neon signs of late-night bars flickered across her windshield. She'd thought about checking into a cheap motel, but every option felt claustrophobic, a too raw reminder that she had no real place to call home anymore. She felt dangerously close to breaking down, until she remembered someone she'd once met at a charity gala. Gabriel Moretti. Gabriel was a wealthy entrepreneur known for building luxury hotels and donating part of his profits to social initiatives. He and Alistair had mingled in similar circles, although they never quite gelled on business deals. But Maribel had always found Gabriel refreshingly genuine in a sea of polished aristocrats. Once he had attentively listened to her talk about her aspirations to open youth centers for underprivileged teens, even offering to connect her with philanthropic contacts. They'd only spoken briefly at events, an exchange of pleasantries, mild small talk, but she'd felt something kind in him. Desperate but uncertain, she scrolled through her phone until she found a business card. Gabriel Moretti, CEO of Moretti Ventures. A personal number had been handwritten on the back. At first, she felt almost embarrassed to call, but tears blurred her vision, and she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the rearview mirror. Tired eyes, a broken spirit that still flickered with a shred of dignity. She dialed. To her shock, Gabriel answered. Even though it was nearly midnight, his tone was calm, his concern immediate. She stammered an apology for bothering him, then recounted her nightmare in halting, shaky words. There was a pause on the other line, and she feared he'd think her unhinged or overly dramatic. Instead, he sounded resolute. "Where are you?" he asked. "Stay put. I'll arrange for someone to bring you to one of my properties. It's safe. You'll have a place to stay tonight." And just like that, a lifeline appeared. She closed her eyes, relief and trepidation tangling in her chest. A mere acquaintance was stepping up in ways her own husband never had. Sometimes the kindest gestures come from the least expected corners of our world. Within half an hour, a polite driver arrived, a staff member of Gabriel's. He led Maribel to a sleek, upscale lounge Gabriel owned, guiding her through a private elevator. Her eyes widened at the pristine marble floors, the artful lighting, and the discreet staff who bowed their heads in greeting. Soon, she was ushered into an opulent suite on the top floor, complete with plush couches, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a panoramic view of the city skyline. Maribel dropped her suitcase and stared at her reflection in the glass, wondering how her life could have derailed so catastrophically that very night. Yet this unexpected sanctuary eased her panic. The driver departed, and she was left in astonished silence until the suite's doorbell rang. Standing there in a simple sweater and well-worn jeans was Gabriel Moretti himself, looking noticeably concerned. He greeted her not with any glib socialite flourish, but with genuine warmth and zero questions that felt prying. He simply said, "I'm sorry you've had to experience all of this. Let's get you settled." They talked until the small hours, though Maribel spoke haltingly, an occasional tear sneaking down her cheek. Gabriel listened carefully, offering neither pity nor judgment, just empathy. He insisted she stay in the suite for as long as she needed, or he could let her use a secluded lake house he owned outside the city. "Whichever makes you more comfortable," he said softly, handing her a keycard. The contrast was jarring. Alistair, the man who had promised love until death, had practically booted her from his life without remorse, while Gabriel, someone she barely knew, was doing all he could to help her stand on her own 2 feet. In a trembling voice, she thanked him. She felt a tangle of conflicting emotions: gratitude, heartbreak, lingering fury at Alistair, and a cautious hope that she might be able to piece her life back together. Exhaustion overtook her, and Gabriel gently excused himself, promising she could reach him anytime. The door closed, leaving Maribel with the hush of solitude. For the first time that day, she allowed herself to breathe without the vice of panic around her heart. Engagement prompt. Ever had a stranger show you unexpected kindness? Share a 6 if it renewed your faith in people. Sunlight streamed into the suite the following morning, and for a split second, Maribel forgot her predicament. Then it all flooded back. Alistair's betrayal, Dahlia's smug entrance, being forced out of her own home. She pulled herself out of the plush bed, freshened up, and ventured down to the lounge area in search of coffee. There she discovered Gabriel, seated at a small table near a panoramic window, swirling a cup of espresso. He stood when he saw her, giving a respectful nod. "How did you sleep?" he asked gently. She managed a small smile. "As well as I could, considering everything." They spoke about next steps. Gabriel noted that at some point, legal matters would have to be addressed. He even recommended an attorney he trusted, Felicia Morgan, known for her discretion in high-profile divorces. Though Maribel initially felt overwhelmed by the idea of battling lawyers, she realized ignoring the situation wouldn't make it vanish. She agreed to meet with Felicia as soon as possible, and so began Maribel's unexpected journey toward reclaiming her life. With a delicate but persistent nudge from Gabriel, she decided to stay at his lake house just outside the city. She needed peace, a sanctuary away from the prying eyes of gossip columns and the harsh reality of seeing Dahlia flaunting her baby bump by Alistair's side in public. The estate was something out of a retreat magazine, a modern cabin perched on a hill, tall pine trees standing like sentinels, and a shimmering lake reflecting the sky's every mood. She arrived to find the caretaker, Beatrice, already informed of her visit, placing fresh flowers in the living area. A sense of calm washed over Maribel as she stepped in, the tension in her shoulders easing for the first time since her world imploded. This was a new space, unblemished by memories of Alistair's sharp words and Dahlia's presence. That night, she curled up by the fireplace, the glow playing on her features as she flipped through old photos on her phone. Each image told the tale of a life she'd thought was unbreakable. But heartbreak has a way of teaching us truths we'd rather not face. Sometimes we must lose the illusions we clung to in order to see the bigger, brighter opportunities that lie ahead. Over the next several days, Maribel moved through the lake house with tentative curiosity. She sipped morning coffee on the wraparound porch, eyes drifting across the glistening water, and allowed herself the small indulgence of silence. Memories of her marriage still throbbed beneath her calm facade, but there was a fragile bloom of hope, too. She had time to reflect on who she was beyond the dutiful wife role. Time to remember her old dreams, the ones that predated Alistair's tech empire. A phone call from Alicia reminded Maribel that she had a life beyond this heartbreak. Alicia demanded to visit, worried about her friend's mental state, Though Maribel had felt initially compelled to hole up in solitude, she agreed it might be comforting to have a familiar face around. Meanwhile, she also took Gabriel's suggestion and arranged a consultation with Felicia Morgan. They discussed how Alistair might try to manipulate finances or discredit her. Felicia was calm, incisive, and unwavering. "I've handled cases more cutthroat than this," she assured Maribel. "Stand your ground. You have rights, and we'll assert them." Then late one afternoon, Gabriel arrived unannounced, bringing a small stack of architectural sketches. "Remember how you once told me about your goal to start youth centers?" he asked, spreading the papers across the cabin's wooden table. "I want to help you do that. My philanthropic group has funds. We could begin in your hometown, maybe expand from there." At first, Maribel was speechless. The idea of resurrecting a dream she'd shelved so long ago. Could she really manage it now, in the midst of so much turmoil? Gabriel's smile was warm, free of any condescension. "We can pace it however you like, but you have the heart and experience for something like this." She saw sincerity glowing in his eyes. For years, her entire existence had revolved around supporting Alistair and his ambitions, leaving her own aspirations to gather dust. Now, with her marriage in ruins, ironically, she might have the freedom to pursue her calling. The thought made her heart flip, part excitement, part terror. Engagement. Prompt: give a quick 7 if you've ever rediscovered a passion you once abandoned, and let us know how it felt. Just a week later, Maribel found herself delving into project outlines for what Gabriel dubbed the Regenesis Center, a safe and resourceful place for teens and single mothers in need. Researching potential locations and brainstorming outreach programs gave her an almost giddy sense of purpose. Every time her mind drifted to Alistair and Dahlia, wondering if they were triumphantly plastering social media with baby photos, she forced herself to refocus on building something meaningful, something that would outlast any heartbreak. Of course, the legal situation hadn't magically resolved. In fact, Alistair's lawyer sent a starkly lowball settlement offer, presumably hoping Maribel would fold under pressure. But Felicia urged her to hold fast, threatening a court battle that could expose Alistair's financial shell games. "He's stashed money in discreet places," Felicia explained bluntly. "He's hoping to make you think you're not entitled to a fair share." Maribel felt her anger flare whenever she read the legal briefs. It was as though Alistair truly believed she was powerless. She could almost hear his dismissive laugh in the lines of text. Still, she pressed on, determined not to let him bully her into submission. Even if it meant battling an army of attorneys, she refused to be thrown aside like trash while he played house with Dahlia. One breezy evening, Gabriel visited again. They shared a simple dinner at the cabin, a roasted vegetable dish and crisp iced tea. She told him about the insulting settlement, and he listened calmly. "Fight for what you deserve," he said. "But remember, money isn't everything. Your peace of mind matters more." Maribel nodded. She was beginning to learn that stepping into her own power meant weighing victory against emotional cost. She didn't need Alistair's entire fortune, just enough to stand on her feet and continue her new path without fear of sabotage. Later, they wandered onto the porch, moonlight reflecting across the lake's surface. A gentle hush enveloped them as the stars blinked overhead. In that serene moment, she realized how easy it felt to talk to Gabriel. He exuded no expectation, no pushy sense of obligation. He simply allowed her to exist, to speak, to grieve and hope in the same breath. Their conversations grew more personal with each passing visit. One night, Gabriel opened up about losing someone special years back, a fiancé who succumbed to a sudden illness. The pain in his eyes was raw, though well-worn. Maribel felt a pang of empathy. Heartbreak often hits us like a storm, uniting us in our shared vulnerability. "I learned that all the money in the world can't fix every tragedy," Gabriel murmured, his voice subdued. Over time, a tender understanding began to form between them. Maribel couldn't help but compare Gabriel's quiet compassion to Alistair's previous displays of love. In hindsight, Alistair had often felt theatrical, concerned with appearances. The difference was night and day, and yet she was freshly out of a horrendous marriage. She had to tread carefully, to heal without hurling herself into another emotional whirlwind. Meanwhile, Dahlia's pregnancy became a public affair. Gossip columns gloated over the rising star of Alistair's startup and his brave new love story. They spun the narrative to cast Maribel as the old flame who didn't support his high-level ambitions. Alicia sent screenshots of these tabloid pieces, outraged by the smear campaign. But instead of fueling her anger, the headlines oddly helped Maribel see how far removed she was from Alistair's world now. Let him paint his illusions. She was building something real. Legal matters hit a turning point when Felicia uncovered that Alistair was funneling money through offshore accounts. The threat of a scandal was enough to make him blink. His attorney, likely realizing how damaging a drawn-out court battle would be, came back with an improved offer. But that offer came with conditions. Maribel must sign a non-disclosure agreement, never speaking of his affair or the baby's true timeline. In other words, hush money. Her instincts rebelled against such a hush-hush arrangement. Yet Felicia reminded her that an NDA might be a reasonable price if it allowed her to move on and fully fund her new direction. Don't let your pride overshadow your future, she counseled. Maribel mulled it over, recognizing that transparency sometimes had to yield to practicality. She wanted closure more than vengeance. Engagement prompt. Type 8. If you think Maribel should take the settlement and start anew. 9 if you'd hold out for a full public reckoning. Ultimately, Maribel decided to accept the revised offer, as long as it provided enough for her to rebuild her life and continue expanding Regenesis Center without constant fundraising struggles. She might harbor a quiet sense of injustice, but the truth was, she could do far more good in the world with the resources than by engaging in a public feud. Felicia expertly negotiated terms that included a substantial lump sum, ongoing financial coverage for specified philanthropic endeavors, and a discreet parting of ways. When Maribel walked into the law firm for the final signing, her nerves flared. Alistair was there, sullen-faced, accompanied by Dahlia, who was now visibly pregnant. The flash of the ring on Dahlia's hand, her engagement ring, presumably from Alistair, made Maribel's stomach coil. A swirl of memories invaded her mind. Her own wedding day, the vow that nothing and no one would ever tear them apart. But the time for illusions had passed. A notary stamped the documents, signatures were exchanged, and within half an hour, Maribel was no longer Mrs. Grant, at least not in the eyes of the law. There was a strange hollowness to the moment. She'd expected tears, a meltdown, something dramatic. Instead, she felt calm, as if a huge weight had been lifted. She stood up, politely thanked the attorneys, and left without so much as a backward glance at Alistair or Dahlia. Outside, the early morning sun felt warm on her skin, and she inhaled deeply. She could almost sense the shift in the air, like a door slamming shut behind her. No matter how it had ended, she was free now. Free from the constant heartbreak, the lies, and the betrayal. She took off her wedding ring, an act that once would have shattered her heart, and slipped it into her purse without sentiment. There was no reason to keep it shining on her hand, a relic of a promise that no longer existed. Engagement prompt. Are you the type to slip away gracefully after a final confrontation, or do you need that last word? Leave a comment to share your style of closure. The same day, Maribel drove straight from the law firm to the nearly completed Regenesis Center. Nestled in a revitalized neighborhood, the building had once been abandoned. Now, bright murals lined the walls, and newly installed windows let in natural light. Classrooms were being furnished with computers and desks. A counseling office was ready to provide privacy for sensitive conversations, and a small auditorium was set up for community events. Maribel strode through the hallway with Felicia at her side, pride swelling in her chest. "This is where that settlement money will go," she said, "to help real people who deserve a second chance." Felicia nodded approvingly, impressed by the transformation. It struck Maribel that, in a way, she too was experiencing her own second chance at life. There were still raw scars from the betrayal, but each day she felt more like herself, perhaps even a new, stronger version. Meanwhile, her relationship with Gabriel Moretti blossomed in quiet corners. They didn't announce anything to friends or the media. For a while, it was just shared dinners at the lake house, walks along the property, and late-night chats beneath star-kissed skies. He showed her glimpses of the man behind the billionaire exterior, the man still grappling with personal grief, yet choosing kindness wherever he could. In return, she let him see her insecurities, her remnants of bitterness, and her rising hope. If a spark of romance was there, it grew delicately, anchored by mutual respect and cautious hearts. The grand opening of Regenesis Center was set for a Saturday morning, and word spread quickly among local press and community members. Reporters were curious. Was Maribel the same woman who just divorced the famed tech genius Alistair Grant? She politely skirted questions about her personal life, focusing on the mission of Regenesis. Gabrielle offered media-savvy guidance, teaching her how to handle tricky journalists, reminding her to stay on message about the center's philanthropic vision. Some nights Maribel wondered if Alistair followed the center's progress from afar, or if Dahlia felt any remorse for the way events had unfolded. But she realized those questions no longer weighed heavily on her heart. She was forging a new path, and if they remained a footnote in her story, so be it. Grand opening day arrived under a clear sky, sunshine gleaming off the fresh paint of the refurbished center. Banners hung across the entrance. Volunteers scurried in last-minute excitement, and local families began gathering to see what Regenesis was all about. Maribel stood at the entrance with Alicia, who could hardly contain her pride. Felicia was there too, along with several city council members. Cameras flashed, capturing the official ribbon-cutting moment as cheers erupted from onlookers. Maribel stepped to a small podium to address the crowd. She was no public speaker, but her passion carried her words. This center is a testament that all of us, no matter our background, deserve a second chance. And sometimes we need someone to believe in us and invest in our future. I hope Regenesis is that place. As she spoke, she felt a slight tremor in her voice, part nerves, part overwhelming gratitude. The applause that followed was enough to make her blink back tears. After the ceremony, she guided a group of teenagers through the facility, pointing out the computer lab, the art studio, and the job resource room. Some looked eager, others more guarded, but Maribel recognized the expressions. Hope feels tentative when you've been disappointed before. "We're here for you," she told them. "Our door is always open." She noticed Gabriel in the background, wearing a satisfied smile. When their gazes met, a warmth spread through Maribel's chest. This was more than a philanthropic venture to him. It was a chance to see her dreams realized. She excused herself from the tour to step aside with Gabriel. In the hallway, she quietly murmured her thanks. "For believing in me when I didn't know if I had anything left to believe in." His hand brushed hers, a gentle contact that seemed to say, "I'm happy to be here." Their eyes locked for a moment, long enough for her to sense the unspoken bond taking shape. They were standing in front of a mural painted by one of the local artists, bright colors swirling to depict growth and unity. It felt emblematic of Maribel's journey, from heartbreak to healing, from being cast aside to standing tall. The event ended with a wave of congratulations, and local news outlets aired upbeat features on Regenesis, praising Maribel's leadership. A few tabloids tried to spin it into a scorned ex-wife's comeback, but their sensational tone barely grazed her emotions now. She'd learned how to shield herself from needless drama. Let them talk. She had a mission far more important than petty gossip. Later that evening, after the crowd had dispersed, Gabriel invited Maribel out for a quiet dinner. They ended up at a charming bistro by the water, soft music drifting on the breeze. Midway through their meal, he reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "You realize the magnitude of what you've accomplished, right? You've built something lasting out of your pain." His voice was low, laced with genuine awe. Maribel's heart clenched in a bittersweet way, remembering how directionless she'd felt just months before. The conversation meandered from the center's next steps to more personal reflections. Bit by bit, they admitted their mutual feelings. It wasn't a flash-bang romance, but something more organic, born from respect, formed under the healing light of compassion. After dinner, they strolled along the pier, the moon casting a shimmering path on the water's surface. Nervous excitement fluttered in Maribel's stomach when Gabriel finally leaned in, pressing a soft, tentative kiss against her lips. That tender moment under the moonlight sealed what words had been dancing around for weeks, a promise of new beginnings. Still, Maribel knew she wanted to take it slow. "I'm grateful for you," she whispered, "but let's not rush. I'm still picking up the pieces." Gabriel nodded, understanding etched in his features. "We'll move at your pace," he assured her. The honesty in his voice calmed her lingering fears. She'd been burned so badly before, But a second chance at love, if it was built on trust, empathy, and genuine support, was worth considering. Engagement prompt. Do you believe in rebuilding trust after heartbreak, or do you prefer to avoid romance altogether for a while? Share a 10 for yes, 11 for no. Time proved to be a healer. By the 6-month mark, Regenesis was thriving. Maribel had hired counselors, teachers, and community liaisons. Teens regularly dropped by for tutoring, while single mothers found job training and childcare support. The media attention eventually pivoted from her divorce scandal to her philanthropic success. Occasionally, she glanced at an article about Alistair and Dahlia. They now had a baby boy, born into a swirl of paparazzi fanfare. The old pang of loss still flickered. After all, she once imagined having children with Alistair. But that sorrow was no longer crippling. She'd accepted that certain chapters must close, even if they end in heartbreak. Slowly and steadily, her romance with Gabriel deepened. Neither of them made grand public announcements, but within their circle, Alicia, Felicia, a few close friends, it was clear how they felt. Maribel saw in Gabriel a man who understood suffering, yet refused to let it define him. He encouraged her to trust her instincts, to keep standing her ground. In turn, she reminded him that vulnerability wasn't a weakness. They found a comfortable rhythm, supporting each other's ambitions while leaving enough room for independence. One balmy weekend, Maribel and Gabriel decided to host a small benefit at the lake house, inviting donors, volunteers, and local families who'd benefited from Regenesis. Standing on the same deck where she once cried in despair, Maribel now laughed with children chasing one another across the grass. Fairy lights twinkled as dusk settled in, and a gentle breeze rustled the pine trees. The atmosphere buzzed with gratitude and second chances, a living testament to what could bloom out of brokenness. Late into the evening, Gabriel found Maribel gazing at the star-filled sky. He slipped his arm around her waist and whispered, "Look how far you've come." It wasn't about praising her as some shining heroine who overcame adversity. It was an affirmation that she'd taken control of her life, refusing to let betrayal define her. In that quiet moment, everything felt so starkly different from the day she stood at her marital home, tears streaming as Dahlia announced her pregnancy. Here she was, empowered, hopeful, and ready for the next chapter. "Thank you for sharing this entire journey with me," she said softly, leaning into Gabriel's warm embrace, her eyes shimmering with genuine contentment. "Dear friend, thank you for accompanying Maribel on this winding path from betrayal to rebirth. It's a testament that when someone kicks you aside for a shinier option, even a pregnant mistress, life might surprise you with new alliances and the courage to stand stronger than ever. You've seen her heartbreak when Alistair and Dahlia dismissed her trembling steps into an uncertain night, and the beacon of hope in Gabriel's selfless generosity. Let this remind you, every ending births a beginning. Every dashed dream can forge a new purpose. Whether it's philanthropic passions, a fresh love, or rediscovering your own worth, there's always a second chance waiting in the wings. If Maribel's story moved you, consider sharing it with someone who needs hope. Together, we keep these stories alive, fueling one another's strength in the face of life's harshest storms. Thank you for reading and for believing in new beginnings.